Little production thing there. Gotcha.
I'm gonna add juice.
Okay, so we have a two-tiered root system. Not uncommon. Typically, if I found such a thing, I would take that lower tier off because ultimately we're going into a shallow container and there's no place for those lower roots. However, the nicer roots in terms of where I would like them to be all extended way out before they had fine roots coming off of them. One thing we know about maples is you can cut them back and they'll pop new growth back behind the cut, right? And this makes them very good for bonsai use. The same can be reasonably predicted to occur on a root. If you shorten the root, you're not likely to kill it. Instead, you're going to promote new buds. They're not going to grow branches like up here. They're going to grow roots, those fine feeder roots that we want. And so root pruning stimulates the tree to produce ramification just the way that pruning the branches does. However, I did not feel comfortable taking off all of those fine roots that necessarily went when I shortened these more favorable roots, more desirable roots. So as an insurance policy, I'm leaving that lower tier on. And they got chased back too, but you see they have fine roots still. This plant needs something to sustain the growth that'll be happening soon. It's got these buds, they're ready to go. As soon as conditions are favorable in the environment and they get the signal, they'll initiate growth. They have enough energy stored in them that even without roots, providing they don't desiccate and there's moisture contained within the body of the plant, they will emerge. They'll start. And you'll get little green leaves and you'll say, yes. And then those leaves are calling for moisture from roots that aren't there. And what happens then? They stop in their unfolding. They don't grow. And then they eventually turn a bad color. And then they shrivel up and die. And you find out after the fact that you killed your plant by too much root pruning. Didn't leave it enough roots. And so it was growing off of stored energy. And when that was used up, it's done. So my objective here is to make sure that doesn't happen. These roots will sustain the growth as it comes out. As the plant grows and starts rebuilding strength, think of all the energy that was taken away from this plant, digging it out of the ground, cutting back all that growing stuff. We've really taken a lot away from this plant. What's important now is that it be allowed to build the energy level back up, which means all this stuff has to come out and be sustained, keep going, and then the plant will start popping new stuff and going about the business of replenishing itself. These roots, my bet is, will allow for that to happen. In the meantime, these critically important roots will have a chance to grow again too. And then the next time this gets repotted, this lower tier gets taken off. All right, so understand what the strategy is in doing this.
Did that have a taproot?
No. The growing bed that I set up to do this is about 8 inches deep, 6 inches maybe, 8 inches at the most. And I laid landscape fabric, woven plastic down in the bottom. Plus, it's in an area where I know you can't dig more than a foot before you hit rock. Mm-hmm. And even though roots grow by hydraulics and can fracture rock and make their way through, these roots go laterally because it's easier to do that. So no taproot on this. If you collected one from nature, it might have a taproot. I'm not familiar enough with trident maples to know if they do that.
What kind of medium are you using when you're growing it in the ground?
It's essentially field soil, but I put what I do every year when I repot. I don't reuse the old potting medium, but I don't want to throw it out either. So what I do is I incorporate it into my growing beds. So the hole that this created when I lifted it out gets backfilled to some extent with used potting medium. And so it's field soil, and in our case there's a lot of clay in it, but it's also supplemented with a lot of organics and also the Stay-Lite Permatil, which forms the aggregate in our bonsai mix. All right, so we have this. I'm not too concerned about trying to get off all of this long fibered sphagnum. It's actually very good stuff for growing roots. Dr. Creech, my mentor, said that this was the very best medium for growing seeds, you know, for sowing seeds and getting them to germinate. That was his opinion, and he did know a thing or two about plants. So I have no concern about some of this stuff remaining. It's good. I've got here, and I'll need a hand. Get Ben, because he's the only one here who doesn't have back issues. He can help me.
Yet. Yes.
That's right. There are people I used to call on. I can't now because I ruined them. All right. That's right. Good lifting techniques. Use
Like
your
that.
back. Don't bend at the knees. Feel the difference?
Neither will hurt.
All right. So this is the box it's going into. Needed a lot of room. Right? That's just a nice fit. And this is advisable. You grow in the ground and then you transition till you finally get to the container size you want. Trying to make that all in one go is, I think, foolhardy. The tree's not ready yet anyway, you know? That's not going into a show anytime soon. So what's the big hurry to get it into a bonsai pot? If you did it, yes?
Maybe in your show, but not anybody else's.
Whoa. How does that make you feel, Dr. Lanahan?
He didn't hear.
It's okay.
It was what,
Bad enough, I'm sure.
Everybody else heard it.
Yeah.
This-
Big scooper there, you know.
Yeah, I thought I brought one.
Get your name straight.
Because it feels good.
Elder man.
That's why I went in this line of work, you know? If I wanted to wear a tie and keep my fingernails clean, I would have gone your direction. So I'm creating a depression here for the tree to sit in. And I'm not too concerned about how it sits in here in terms of, you know, what side presents to where. And I'll talk in a moment about why that is. But I am concerned that this sit in the correct way, and I've got to take more out.
My apologies for the microphone issues. In essence, Arthur is continuing to remove material and create a depression for the tree. Next, Arthur is placing the tree into the container. He's not looking for a particular fund, he's looking for the best view of the tree from all angles. This includes not just the branches and the trunk, but also the root system. This will allow it to grow in a manner that continues to look good in the future. Sometimes soil is needed to be added to the bottom side of an area to lift it up and put it in position and keep it there. Once again, looking back and checking to make sure that the tree is in the proper position. Once satisfied with the way the tree is positioned, add soil and work into the root base.
When you cut a woody plant, it has two chemical responses. And one is the chemical that initiates the growth of the callus material that'll cover over the wood. The other one forms like a firewall against decay. It sets up a defense line so that decay will only go so far and then be checked.
What are these chemicals?
I don't know the names of them. I'm not a chemist. This is stuff I've read and have had occasion to see trees respond in a way that makes me think the information is credible. Oxygen. So,
You're good. You're wonderfully fine.
that can be counter-affected to some degree, that second chemical action that sets up the defense, if this is allowed to dry out too much. And so sealing it over prevents that loss of moisture and helps the tree do what it does. In the end, you know, the tree provides the cover. And this sealant that you put on doesn't do much to enhance that. The tree does the work. What you do is to try to facilitate what the tree does. And some sealants that people use actually work against what the tree is trying to accomplish. And bad pruning cuts can also work against what the tree is trying to accomplish. I mentioned that earlier in that, you know, sometimes you'll see that the callus doesn't roll in from the entire periphery of the cut. It only comes in from part, and then the thing doesn't seal effectively. Here's an example, right? This is an old wound, and you can see that the callus is moving in very aggressively from this side, and somewhat from this side, but not very much from this side. But it is there. If you look, you can see it. And so that will eventually cover over. This is a much better cut here, and you can see that the callus is rolling in entirely from around the whole cut. This one's very good, and this was one I made while the plant was in the ground, and I actually went ahead and sealed it with the wood glue then, you know, while it was still in the ground, and you can see this is covering very well. Well,
Just a curious question.
yes.
Why, if you do this a lot, why wouldn't you use a commercial
Tree cut paste.
tree? Yeah.
I don't know I don't know what their composition is, and they're often more expensive.
They're
This is very
expensive,
cheap.
And they have pesticides.
Yeah, there's no need for that.
Okay.
Yeah, all I'm wanting to do is seal it so that moisture can't escape.
And you're just using a regular all-purpose
Yeah,
wood glue.
type on, and the two, it means it's meant for both interior and exterior.
Yeah.
So it can hold up to weather
Weather,
exposure.
yeah.
All right, so some of these, as you see, I've made your standard kind of pruning cut and then used the glue to seal over. In other places, we've left a stub. In this case, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'm anticipating new growth here. That's my hope. We'll see if it works out that way. I'm not worried about sealing this off because this is going to die back anyway. So I'm just going to let the plant tell me where the living tissue ends and the dead tissue begins. And after a year, you'll be able to tell that. When you look, the part that's died will shrink. And you'll see an actual line that shows you this is where the living material ends. And everything beyond this point is dead. And then if you want to cut, you can cut back to that line, or if you want to carve, you can carve back to that line. So that'll be left untreated the way it is. These others I want to treat by making them into dead wood. All right, so two different ways to do this. And I'm making a mess on the floor here with water. Is Peggy here? Peggy, I'm sorry, but there is some water on the floor. Well, it is. It's not going to get ruined, but I know it's probably not something we want to do. All right, so you take a piece like that where I've cut off. I have no use for this branch, but I don't want to try to finish it, by making a standard cut and then having the callus roll in on it. In this case, I want a little dead stub there, and what I do is take this is a root pruner, root pruner. Of course, they sell a tool that's meant for splitting branches, but a root pruner works in most cases. And then break it, right? So the cutting gives you something to grab onto and snap off, all right? And we do this and peel back the bark. To some extent, it's fine to have it tear into part of the branch that we're intending to keep. Not too much, but a little bit is good. Felton Jones, who most older bonsai people know his name, he was very important in the early days of bonsai in the South. He was the one who first showed me. He cut a branch off of a pine tree, and he cut it like halfway, and then he grabbed the branch and yanked it off the rest of the way and tore it down the length of a trunk. Left like a 3-inch tapering wound there, and I was aghast, like, why'd you do that? And he said, oh, it's much better this way, and the tree will heal just fine, and then the resulting scar will be more believable than a round scar. And it worked out just the way he told me. So I do a similar thing now with the cuts that I make. So you see, we made some breaks in it so that I could grab sections and pull them and tear them off, right? And the whole idea is to make it look rough, right? And then we let the plant settle this issue, right? This wood is not stable, and it will decay rather quickly, right? It's not like juniper wood where it has a natural rot resistance and will last a long time. This won't. But by the time this rots away, the tree will have determined where the dieback occurs to and how to finish it off. It'll look more agreeable and authentic than this will. But I did this one because this is where that odd construction was. So I went ahead and just cut it like that, and we'll see if we can get it to cover over smoothly. I was afraid that if I tore it, and maybe I was wrong in thinking like that, I could have tore it into here and made it look very damaged, but chose not to. So we have some cuts done the traditional way, we have some that are done in a different way, and there are some that we're going to have to carve. All right, there are two areas I want to carve particularly. One is right here where an old cut was made, and you'll notice that when I made that cut, I left a stub. I didn't try to cut in close to the trunk. And that was a couple years back. So we can actually see how the plant has responded to that. And if you look right here closely, you can see the callus. It's rolling in, but it can only go so far because that wood is there, right? And this is a very common thing that I see on deciduous trees out in nature. Only what happens after the passage of more time? This rots away. And then what do you get? You get a hole right here. But it's not a hole flush to the trunk. You actually see like, oh, there used to be a branch there and something happened, that branch broke off and, it rotted away, but the tree is kind of, there's a word for it, right? Where you kind of quarantine the area. The word is slipping my ancient mind now, but it's a feature that trees have where they compartmentalize, right? So it's compartmentalized this area. The living tissue is fine. This will die back to a certain extent and leave a hollow. We're going to accelerate that by doing a little carving in there, but I'm not going to try to carve it back. I'm going to observe where that line of callus is and just carve to there and then dig down a little bit. And then up here, in looking at this structure really isn't useful to me. So, it's too distracting. It was distracting when it was alive. It won't be any less distracting when it's dead. So we're going to carve that out and make it look like you know, a big chunk of the tree just tore off there, right? And then that'll give us a suitable ending for that. So the die grinder makes a lot of noise and sprays wood chips around, so you'll probably want to redistribute yourselves. But it won't take long. It's very quick.